Welcome to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times, sponsored by MSA Safety. In this series, we bring you sessions from the Emergency Services Show and the Emergency Tech Show 2025. Following on from last year's conversation with Simon Parr, who heads up the Emergency Services Network programme, we learn in this episode about the technology and the partnership with suppliers. The panel talks about the progress of the technical delivery of ESN, which will enable the national deployment of 4G-based critical communications services to all emergency services users.
Good afternoon all. Niall Stokoe, as just been said, I'm the Director Operations on ESMCP. In terms of where we are at the moment from a programme perspective, genuinely exciting times. Moved on since the signing of our two major contracts with our two major partners, BTE and IBM, both of whom are here today, and now into milestone delivery. Thus far, 10 months in, 5 milestones have been delivered. We are cracking on with infrastructure build across the piece, particularly with data centres and all of the infrastructure involved with that, building the backbone that we need to deliver ESN. And then on top of that, coverage continues with EAS largely complete, and many of you who are in emergency services organisations being aware of the critical operational location work that is also ongoing. So that's where the programme finds itself at the moment. I'll now ask the panel just to introduce themselves briefly before we go into the first question. So Nigel, if I will start with you.
I am the Director for Delivery and Deployment on ESMCP. And I've been in the IT industry for 35 years or so, delivering very large, complicated programs of work. So everything from digitising the world service through to Vodafone money transfer. So a lot of background in this space.
Mark.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Assistant Chief Constable Mark Nottage. I'm the National Police ESN Coordinator, and I lead the NEAT team, which is the MPCC, ESN and Airwave team. And I know that's TMFA, too many abbreviations, for which I apologise.
Thanks, Mark. Mark. Yeah.
Another Mark. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Taylor. I'm a partner in IBM Consulting, and I'm one of our user services delivery leads. I sort of span my time between the technical team and our service operations team.
Great, thank you. Matt.
Matt Hall, BTEE. I'm the End-to-End Solutions Director for BT. And I've been in various guises looking at the design and delivery of new services across mobile industry for over 30 years, starting off with 2G all the way through to 5G now, to some of the services we're doing now. I've been involved in the ESN programme for over 10 years in various iterations, and obviously continue to work with our colleagues from IBM to try and deliver a solution for the user community.
Great, thanks, Matt. I didn't expect to be doing this and seeing the Transformers walking from right to left, but hey, Bumblebee, how are you? Excellent. I think it's important as we are talking about ESN that the first people that we hear from really are the emergency service. So the first question I want to ask today is to Mark, which is, what are your biggest aspirations for the emergency services network in terms of what capabilities it can deliver for users? Mark.
Thank you, Neil. So the first thing that I'd like to say is, if I had £1 for every time a police officer said, all I want to do is to be able to do what I do on my own private phone on my work network, I think I'd be a very rich man. But that said, what we've currently got is a really reliable system, but it's a really thin pipe. What we're going to get with ESN is a big fat pipe that we're going to be able to put a lot more data down, whether that's voice, video or other data, and we need to be able to do it and have access to that coverage when we need it, all the time we need it, and it's got to be reliable. So we've got to have initially, effectively, what we've got with Airwave, which is going to be a radio, which is push to talk with an emergency button where we can contact our colleagues, we can contact the control room, and we can be contacted. That's the first thing. But actually, with this big fat pipe, we've got loads of opportunity to do a lot more than we do at the moment. And that means working with emergency services colleagues to better understand, shared situational awareness, joint understanding of risk, and actually start to connect all of the applications that I've heard people on this stage talking about through today so far. But it's easy to say, I just want to be able to do what I do on my iPhone or my Google phone on a work phone. But it's a bit more complicated than that, because a lot of what we do needs to be secure. It needs to enter the evidential chain. We need to keep records of it. We need to make sure that's done with proper security and data management. But when we've got this big fat pipe, that means that all of the opportunities that we've got to be far more innovative in the way that we use and share data, that we're far more automated, that we can start to be far more efficient in the way that we track our officers, what they're doing, get information to them and get that information back. There's a huge opportunity once we've got that big fat pipe. But the important thing is, first and foremost, we need a radio that when we press it, it works when we need it all of the time, and that we've got absolute confidence in that, because mission critical comms is that, it's mission critical. And I and my colleagues need to know that when we push that, there's someone on the other end. That's the only way we're going to continue to build confidence with the public. We're going to continue to make sure that we've got a legitimate role. So that's the first thing. After that, genuinely, I think having mission critical comms for the next generation, I think, the sky's the limit in what we can do next.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I think really key points there around that airwave equivalency as we deliver the first element of ESN, but mission criticality being at the very heart of how we all go about our business. Staying on that question, if I could come, Mark, to you in terms of the systems integrator development, the consideration of that mission critical application, etc. That's very much where IBM are working with us on that. So perhaps your view again on that ESN delivery aspect too.
Sure. So I think really building what Mark said, which is a really strong answer, right, in terms of it's got to do the thing it needs to do to start with in terms of the basics. And once it does that, we've got this really amazing data platform that's secure, provides mission critical capabilities for our emergency services to go on and embrace all this additional technology. So we can look at things in the future such as 5G, such as AI, such as all the different data capabilities and those sorts of things. But they only become enabled once we've done the original job it has, which is to deliver ESN, transition our users and turn off airwaves safely. And so doing that first then really gives us that platform to enable us to actually go on and give additional capabilities to our emergency services.
Great, thank you. And I think the Mark brought out the tagline there of deliver ESN and turning off airwaves safely, and it's something that we absolutely live by on the programme on a day-to-day basis from the way that we go about business. Given who we have here on the stage today, I just want to talk a little bit on how we have worked to create a strong partnership. We have very deliberately used the word partner as we have onboarded our two key partner organisations. So, Nigel, I think I'll come to you first on this, please. But how have you created a strong partnership between government and private sector technology teams and ensured you have a common purpose for delivery? Nigel.
Yes, Neil. So we've taken a deliberate stance at the start of the programme in January, all the way through mobilisation and into delivery, and we're now 9 months into the refreshed delivery. We've taken the stance that we would operate as a partnership. We wouldn't have suppliers working for us. Us giving our requirements to suppliers, we work as a team. And we've deliberately tried to structure both our organisation, our governance, working co-located together, sharing different offices in order to kind of facilitate that. It's really been essential for us, and will continue to be essential, to keep a trusted relationship so that we've got honesty, transparency in what we're delivering, and we can pick up issues and address them as quickly as possible. And that's going to continue. We've made some particular visits to Samsung. We'll be going to talk to Ericsson, and we'll be doing that across our supply chain to ensure a full integration as far as we possibly can.
Great, thanks, Nigel. I think the key word there is that it's been joint throughout. Matt, if I could come to you on the same question from an EE perspective, how has that felt as a partner joining the organisation and becoming part of that one team aspect?
I think the one team approach is really important, and actually obviously being a bit of an incumbent mobile services provider and now working with a new user services provider, that has been one of the key things that we've been trying to engage, obviously, and share our experiences that we've had across the program today, explain what we've been doing and how we've been working with our own suppliers and our own partners from the radio side, the core side, and even the deployment of the radio network, and the experience that we've had with the previous work that we've done, and shared that both with the Home Office, who have been engaged all the way through, but also with the user community, and also with the new user services provider, just to bring them knowledge that we've gone through and some of the challenges that we've had previously, so we can make this a success and deliver the service that the user community needs.
Great, thanks, Matt. And I think one of the key things for all to be aware is those of us who are on the stage today are regularly in the same office, on the same floor plate, working together, collaborative across the whole division. And indeed, almost all of the working groups that we have are joint, designed to enable particularly the collaborative function amongst the partnership elements. Just moving then into challenges, which is, as you can imagine, ESN itself is an extremely challenging environment. The question is, what are some of the notable challenges you face getting systems ready to operate across both Airwave and ESN, and how have you worked to resolve these? Nigel, could I come to you first on this?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned at the outset, we've just come to the end of some of our key procurements. That's been a huge exercise. We still have more to do. Interworking being a key one of those, and we've now come to the end of standstill, not ready to announce that, but that's one of the key things we need to get in place to enable communications across Airwave and ESN. Other things that we're looking to do at the moment, obviously, are pick out some of the longer term challenges. So not just the things that we need to address in delivery, of which there are several, but what do we need to do to ensure that delivery and deployments are more joined up, and we can try and move the levers left and right to speed up bits of the program where we can. So that'll be key areas like devices, and we're just starting to work through the start of procurement around that. Control rooms and the control room interface, that's absolutely critical to us both to complete our testing and in order to enable deployment. And we're working now to sit down with the user community and the supply chain to start to think about how we might build pilots, what we might do in those pilots, and what benefits we'll get out of those pilots that lead us then into a secure and safe transition and deployment exercise.
Great, thank you. And there's a temptation to spend the whole time when you talk about challenges looking at it from a program delivery perspective, but I think I'd also like to look at it from a user perspective, if I may. And Mark, if I could come to you with a similar question, but from a user perspective, particularly when we're looking across Airwave and ESM, where do the challenges come from your perspective?
Okay, one of the challenges is going to be that so many people think that it's just simply swapping an Airwave radio for an ESN device. And of course, it's so much more complicated than that. I think the biggest challenge is confidence, that we know the history that this program has been on. So from a user confidence point of view, we need to be confident that we've got the right coverage in the right places, the right control rooms, devices, etc., etc. And at the right time that I'm representing that back into policing. And my colleagues from health and fire and in Wales and Scotland are doing exactly the same, but making sure that we're in a position, or I'm in a position, to go to 43 individual chief constables at some point in the future and say we are ready to get off of Airwave and onto ESN. That's going to be the challenge, but that's why we're working really closely within the programme and back out into policing and with our wider colleagues to make sure that we put those building blocks for confidence in place so that we've got the right governance, we've got the right structures, we've got the right testing, we've got the right financial modelling, we've got all of the elements that should build confidence so that at some point in the future, I can stand in front of a room full of chief constables and ask them individually to switch over from one to the other. So it's definitely confidence. That's on me to make sure that me and my team are getting all of the evidence and all of the building blocks to address some of the really sticky issues that we've already faced and we know that we're going to face in the future.
Great, thank you, Mark. And I think the confidence piece really does underpin how we go about work, but critically in that is transparency, to ensure that we are making all of the information that we can available to enable the planning out there and build that confidence. as we talk about confidence, one of the major elements that we are constantly asked about in airwave equivalency is in and around coverage. Coverage, as you can understand, we all know, is the very backbone of what we are providing both on airwave today, but also in the future must be able to provide on ESN. And if you haven't been able to, if you simply have a look at the change in the coverage from a 4G perspective from 2016 to now, driven a lot by some of the work that's been done on ESN and particularly in EAS. So Matt, unsurprisingly, I might be coming to you with this next question, but having just got it in. So in terms of the lessons that we've been learning, because we've been doing a lot of testing of the ESN network, what lessons have been learned from testing ESN over a commercial 4G network as you prepare for delivering that service to users?
So, I mean, obviously the key thing that we need to do is to be able to provide a consistent priority access and performance across the whole of the network everywhere we need that. As part of that, over the past, from the very inset when we started the project 10 years ago, we've been continually testing, validating the solution, what our network, how it performs, both from a coverage perspective, but also from a performance perspective. So the availability, the reliability, the preemption prioritization activities. Over the past few years, we've been working with the Home Office and the user community, looking at a program called RAN field trials. These RAN field trials, we've been continually going through the last 2 to 3 years, looking at particular events and not necessarily incidents, but events and activities that are going on where there's high congestion. So things like sporting events and festivals are a great example where we can really test and prove the network to prove that in a high consumer footfall environments, how the emergency services would work in that particular area. So as I say, we've run a number of events. We've been working with the user community of sharing either the events and the debriefing. As a result of that, we've gone through and we've looked at dedicated access, priority access, and making sure and reconfiguring the network each time we've gone through that process, each event, to learn, change, reconfigure and optimize our network so we can deliver the service to give the assurances and the reliability and that confidence that our solution will be able to provide that mission critical, always available, always on services for the user community.
Great, thanks, Matt. And you've actually taken it one stage further where you have gone to the point where you will entirely flick the area, a part of the network over for emergency services use. Could you just expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have undertaken some particular events and activities where we've looked at exclusive use for emergency services and understand both from an emergency services impact, but also a wider impact in the community as well. So to make sure how will 999 services work, how will the wider impacts across particular activities. And we've done some work during some of the football events back end of last year to actually support that type of activity, working with the emergency services during that particular event, but also working with our commercial teams to understand what the impacts and how that would work and how we would trigger these types of incidents and support these type of events.
Thank you, Matt. And part of this, as well as the work that's been done on EAS and the overall network coverage, has been making sure that we can meet the critical operational location requirements as well. A lot of work with our users on that. And I wondered, Mark, if you might want to just comment on the critical operation work that's ongoing at the moment and how you and the rest of your teams have been intimately engaged.
So with critical operational locations, it's really important that, as I said at the start, that we've got a service that works where we need it the whole time that we need it. When I came into post just over a year ago, we reviewed those to make sure that the critical operational locations are covered. We know that there's quite some expense and effort to make sure that they're delivered. And we also know that that footprint might change over time. I think it goes back to the second point that I made, that at some point, policing is going to have to be confident enough that we've got what we need where we need it. And that's why we're working all the time with the programme, having those meetings through every single week. And we've got the right governance in place in policing through bronze, silver, gold, right up to Chief Constable's reference group. And our mantra the whole time is to support the programme in getting off airwave as quickly, as safely and affordably as possible. So that's what guides all of our decision making. So we know that there's going to be some difficult decisions coming up, and all the time we come back to, is this going to help us get off airwave as quickly, as safely and as affordably as possible? And if it does, that's going to guide our decision.
Great, thank you. And just picking up on a couple of points that came out there, when we were talking about ensuring priority and preemption, ensuring the ability to transition off airwaves safely. One of the things that really underpins that is confidence, as Mark has said, but linked to confidence is resilience and the ability to ensure that we've got a resilient provision. And I'd just like to touch on that in the next question, which is what systems and services are being built and tested to ensure they meet the requirements of users and have the requisite resilience and security. Nigel, if I could come to you first on that, and then Mark,
Sure.
I think I'll come to you in terms of the build that you've got going on at the moment.
Sure. So I'm going to roll back a little bit before we talk about what else we're doing to build solutions to demonstrate capability. So the starting point for me is the elaborated requirements, the user requirements that they have set out. That is our contract with them that we need to deliver. And we need to ensure that they are traceable all the way through design, build, test, and out through service delivery. In order to ensure that, we're building a number of things like the sandbox, where control room suppliers can connect and test out their software. We're building model officers, one down in the south of the country, in Winchester, and the other one somewhere further north, probably in Leicester, so that we can go and test things in a little bit more detail in a real working environment against the test run. So these are the kind of mechanisms that we're going to leverage and use. And then finally, we're going to be running a number of pilots. In fact, we've already started some pilots effectively with some of the fixed vehicle devices, just testing those, getting familiarity with those, working against the BT network. We'll be using those pilots to demonstrate capability as we move through testing into service acceptance and then into transition. So there's some of the key things that we'll provide to demonstrate capability.
Great, thank you. And Mark, just from that sort of build perspective that Nigel's just touched on there, can you expand a bit more on where IBM and critically the systems integrator are from that sort of resilience and built to have a resilient network from the start perspective?
Yeah, of course. So it's a really exciting time in the program at the moment. We've got our design milestones, and now we're moving into the real build phase. And so we're starting to see some real progress and momentum in our delivery teams, which is it's a really exciting point for everybody involved. Nigel mentioned it. We're in the middle of building the sandbox at the moment. So that's something that's actually being built as we talk. So that's our MCX sandbox. It's going to be our first sort of real production level environment, if you like, that consumers can come in and start using. Really exciting progress. We're in the progress of receiving our first drop of the MCX product from Samsung, which will go into that sandbox. So that's really good progress. The model office, which is key to sort of assuring and testing the solution before we move into the sort of more further production networks and things, they're being built at the moment again in Hursley and things. And we're looking at things like our reference handheld devices as well, the devices that we'll use to try and simplify that marketplace to actually make sure we validate all these requirements, as Nigel touched on, to make sure that when we press the button, as Mark said right at the start, it works every time and for sure.
Yeah. And in the way we're approaching the build, we are building resilience from the very outset in terms of number of infrastructure, data centers, for example, etc. is absolutely underpinning that, isn't it, Mark? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So the data centers are being built at the moment. We are building them incrementally, but like you say, they're being built up. So we've got that resilience across the country and across all of the different nodes. Each of the different sort of flavors of application have got different resiliency patterns that we're designing and working across all of the users with the authority, with mobile services, to make sure those patterns are known and tested. They're going to be theoretically tested in terms of models and design documents, and then actually assured through the testing process as we go through.
This episode of the Emergency Services Times podcast is sponsored by MSA Safety, proudly supporting emergency services and first responders on the front line. At MSA Safety, protecting first responders isn't just what we do, it's who we are. We work closely with fire and rescue services across the UK to develop and deliver safety solutions designed to meet your ever-evolving needs. That includes MSA Bristol Firefighter PPE, trusted by services across the UK and beyond, shaped through years of collaboration with frontline teams. It also includes our growing investment in innovation and technology, from the connected M1 SCBA modular solution to our agile, fully managed service model that helps keep crews protected and ready to respond. But for us, safety goes beyond equipment. We believe in standing shoulder to shoulder with the people who dedicate their lives to protecting others, whether it's supporting firefighter charities, backing mental health initiatives, or showing up for community events. MSA is proud to be part of the emergency services family. To learn more about our work in the UK and how we're supporting first responders every step of the way, visit www.msasafety.com. With MSA Safety, when you go in, we go in with you.
One of the major elements of resilience, of course, is in terms of coverage. So, Matt, unsurprisingly, I'll be coming to you in a moment. But there are a number of elements that we are also doing in coverage at the moment, and particularly as we have recognised the requirement from a power perspective as well as a connectivity perspective. Could you just talk us through where you are now and the proposals you've got in train regarding resilience across the network as well?
Yeah, so resilience, obviously, from our perspective, coverage resilience is one, but I've got to mention that obviously our core resilience is key as well. Yeah. So exactly the same as IBM and user services have got to do associated with their site resilience. We're going through that exact program. Actually, we've built the core sites that we're actually utilising already to actually deliver the service as well. And that's part of the conversation that I raised earlier about the RFT program that we're actually doing as well. From a resilience perspective on the RAN, we haven't been sitting still over the last number of years, and both from a commercial perspective and from an ESM perspective, we've continuously looked at how we can support and improve the resilience of the network. That is including look at power resilience. So what should we do about additional power? So whether that's additional batteries, generators, but it's not just the sites, it's also looking at the backhaul. And we've done extensive work on modernising our whole backhaul estate. So moving away, so a lot of fibre activity of rolling out fibre across our network. We've done a lot of work associated with the number of sites we have within the clusters that we use. So again, all the work that the commercial network has done associated with 16 sites on a particular cluster associated with one backhaul solution. We've halved these environments. We've halved the number of 6 sites or more as well. We've looked at doing dual resilient backhaul as well. So we've split across a number of sites to support it. And then we've included things like additional microwave and fibre to actually support the solutions as well. So from a resilience perspective, we've done a lot in that area. One of the other things we can't underestimate around the ESN network is to do with generic coverage and overlapping coverage. And obviously with the number of sites we have, 20,000 sites plus another 2,000-3,000 other sites that we've deployed recently, including all the densification we've done across the whole of the UK, again for commercial and for ESN, that overlapping coverage is really key. And what we've also done is looked at how we distribute the backhaul for these particular solutions, the clusters, etc. So we can lose a cluster, but not necessarily lose any geographical coverage within that cluster as well. Even down to things like the fibre connectivity they go to within each of the switch sites that they go to. Do we distribute them as well? And even looking down at power. So a lot of that work has been going on. One, to harden our commercial network as mobile networks fundamentally become national critical infrastructure for lots of reasons, but also the work that we're doing with ESN to support it. So this whole resilience is one of the key things that we've been doing over the past 5-6 years and really focusing on it for the last 3 or 4 years to really understand how we can improve the overall resilience and provide that service to the user community.
Great, thank you, Matt. And you brought out some very good points there around it's not just about the delivery of the technology, it's about the wrap around it. So the resilience to power, fuel, etc., etc. I think it would be useful, because we've just spoken quite a bit there about coverage, to have a user perspective on this and looking at the RAN-FT work, Mark, that has been undertaken, and also I know your own knowledge of the resilience work as well. I wonder the user perspective as you're looking at the program, seeing the work it's doing, how does that look from your perspective?
So clearly coverage is going to be of absolute critical importance, but it isn't just going to be the coverage, it's making sure that we've got operationally effective connection. So actually just having the coverage on your device, what we're going to need to make sure is that we've got all of the other aspects that make sure that we can use it in all of our operational contexts. And that's going to require assurance, pilots, testing. That's going to need to involve our frontline officers going out and having confidence in the product that they've got. And I'm confident with the arrangements we've got with my team, which are operational police officers that are seconded into the team that still do operational work. Some weekends they're back out using, or will be back out using, the product of what it is that they've helped the programme get ready. So I think through that point of view and through their connections back into forces, we can be confident that chief constables aren't going to accept into service something that is operationally inferior to what they've got at the moment. And I know we've had reassurances from the programme that that is what will be delivered.
Great, thank you, Mark. So coming on just to the final question, I'll ask each panel member to contribute to this, and then we've probably got about, I think, depending on how long they take, probably got about 10 minutes or so, or 5 to 10 minutes for questions from the audience. So we've spoken a lot about where we want to be as a programme, getting to airwave equivalency, and then there being the green fields beyond. Let's think about those green fields beyond, if we can, in this, which is some of the innovative aspects of ESN that differentiate it from current communication provision, and how you might see that evolving over time. So, Nigel, if I come to you first, and then I'll work my way this way around the panel, if
Sure.
I may, but Nigel.
So just to pick up on the point, so a little bit more than airwave equivalency to start. Coverage is obviously better. We're getting lots of good feedback around that. But in terms of going forwards, as Mark said, we provisioned significantly larger data pipes than we had originally planned for, to allow for some of that future growth, some of that future usage. Obviously, you've got different devices now. You can do lots more with them. So apps is one area that potentially a lot of the user community may wish to look at going forwards. Obviously, the use of videos and data is going to be key once we've started to get this deployed and into a wider usage. And also giving the user community a slightly wider choice around the devices that they choose to utilize for live service. So not just the handheld devices, but also the fixed vehicle devices, how they integrate with other devices within the vehicles. All of that will be something that could be built on the foundations of ESM once we start to roll that out.
Great, thanks, Nigel. And Mark, we were speaking earlier about some of the advantages, particularly from a innovative enablement via data, but also the idea of the joint working, taking forward the JESUP recommendations, etc. So I wonder, from your perspective, how you see it as we move from initial provision into where we want to be.
So certainly in the future, there's going to be a lot more opportunity to more quickly identify risk, get shared situational awareness, make sure that we're pushing that information to the right people when they need it, whether that's other emergency services partners or where there's national threat. Clearly, with video, that's going to be an opportunity to quickly assess a scene, to pass that back. But there's also some real caution around that. I used to be in charge of a control room, and in the control room, if our operators are constantly seeing trauma, we've got to think through how that works as well. Making sure that we're protecting them is very different, taking an emergency phone call than seeing something in front of you from an officer. So we're going to have to think that through. But the opportunities to use officers effectively to get them the information that they need and start to automate some of the processes. Very briefly, I can still remember, even though it was a long time ago, what it was like to get your briefing around doing a bail check to see if somebody's in, then finding the address, seeing if they're in, they're not in, you write the statement, you put it into the collator's office, the collator goes out and puts it on a briefing, eventually somebody arrests the person, puts them before a call. With a big fat pipe and automation, there's an opportunity to do that in a seamless way, to identify risk, find out where the offending is, get information into a case file, get the briefing out. All of that, once we've got a fat pipe, we can start to exploit far better. And, you know, probably all of the briefings that we've seen, and as we've looked around this room today, actually, if we've got more opportunity to do that lifetime and keep it secure and make sure that we've got the priority and preemption at the same time, then there's huge opportunity in that to keep our officers safe, but more importantly, to protect the public and build confidence.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I think that process automation and the the idea that will save a considerable amount of time is probably one of the most exciting things about it. Just thinking there about capability and continuous capability development, and Mark, I'll come to you on this. There will be a curiosity as people get hold of the devices and go, well, what happens if I can I do this? Because I've seen a need for it. Just, your perspective there, Mark, from a core network perspective, enabling the innovation, enabling that ability. How do you see that being teased out?
Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting, isn't it? The sort of the chance to go on and do these exciting innovations on this platform is going to be hopefully transformational for the emergency services. I think once that mission critical secure data platform is there, it really opens up the possibility for vendors to bring in apps that can then help things like the words like Mark said, automation, and really improve those operational efficiencies for the emergency services. We're really lucky in the program. We're working with incredible thought-leading companies around the globe specialised in this space, and looking at the innovations they're going to continue to bring over the next few years is really encouraging how we can then adapt them and integrate them into the ESN program for the future.
Great, thank you. And Matt, when we look at the delivery of particularly of the network, we're not just going to stand still from that perspective either. I mean, you've seen, and Starlink are already here. They're somewhere over there. I've seen them earlier on today. There's LEO. There's the development into 5G, et cetera, et cetera. How do you see innovation, both from the network perspective, but also particularly from the radio access network perspective? A lot of that developing as well.
Yeah, I think it's fundamental to the program. The original intent of the program of ESN 10 years ago was that evolutionary path and that continual evolution, rather than the let's wait 20 years and then something will happen, and staying on that path. So the advent of 5G, a lot of the work that's going on with network slicing, RAN partitioning, and what we're doing there, and some of the services that we can see. The talk before was about streaming video, and we've done a lot of work to understand how streaming video is going to work. Uplink video is going to be actually support both the user community and the general public as well, and the additional of partitioning to allow to give this guaranteed priority service when needed, when required. I think one of the other things we need to be aware of is things like companion devices and all the other work from the ecosystem, the glasses, the watches, the wearables, all these things, and the work that we as an industry, not just BTE, but as a general industry are doing of these companion devices, and how the emergencies can start exploiting this stuff. Why should an officer be less enabled to do their work than the public? Now we're putting them on that path to do that. And when I see some of the innovation in the wearables, the glasses, the devices, the cameras, that AI stuff is really innovative. And with the likes of 5G, that innovation, situational awareness from the network itself is really key to the future of general policing, ambulance, fire, and all around the industry. I think it's really, really key.
Great, thank you, Matt, and really thank you for bringing it back down to the users and what it could be from them from a sort of technology innovation perspective.
I'm a sergeant in Sussex Police on the roads policing team. As a frontline user, this is something that's been going since 2015. It got restarted in 2018. You said we've progressed a lot in the last 10 months. What happened 10 months ago? And when can I, as a frontline user, when am I going to have it in my hand?
Great. Okay. Thank you very much for that. So 10 months ago was and Mark, I'll come to you for the second piece of that if you want, and we'll go there. But 10 months ago, we signed our user services and mobile services contract. So we had been working over 2 years to bring both of those contracts to fruition. That then enabled us to move from a period of contract negotiation genuinely into delivery with an integrated program plan that we developed over the moment. So really from that moment, it was we are marching towards exactly the second question you asked there of when can I expect to see this in my vehicle and in my hand. That in itself is a plan that we have at the moment. Our integrated program plan is looking at the development of both data and voice capability over the next few years, leading us to the final stage of being able to transition off airwave and onto ESN. But I think particularly from a policing perspective, I have obviously Mark here, but I think Mark, if I come to you to talk about that sort of transition and where we will be in terms of putting things in the hands of frontline officers.
So I think part of the answer to that is I want you to be in a position for the first part, which is a radio where you press it and you've got an emergency button, that it doesn't really matter whether you're on airwave or ESN. So that's what I need that seamless transition to be, that you're safe and you can respond to your colleagues and they can respond to you. In terms of the timeline of what happens next, we've got the kind of the build to switch ESN on, which will be the early part of 2028 when there's a full voice service ready, but there's also switching the airwave off. So we've got the left to right, we've also got the right to left, and we've got to make sure that bit in the middle is covered really well. So what's going to happen in forces, I know everyone's going to want to go in the middle of the bell curve. Nobody's going to want to go first because that's going to be really difficult and probably quite expensive. No one's going to want to go last because they don't want to be the force that means that airwave hasn't been switched off yet. So one of the jobs that I've got to do is negotiate through the bronze, silver and gold groups so that we come up with a really sensible, what I call batting order of how we're going to transition. That's really reliant on the programme so that we haven't got coverage sorted in one place, the control room sorted in another place and all the vehicles fitted out somewhere else. All of those projects have got to come together in an integrated programme plan. And once we've seen that, I can say to you, Sussex are going to be going at this point within their region on these dates. And then we can start to mobilise transition and then get off of airwave.
Thanks, Mark. And you picked up there on some of what we call the enabling projects and making sure that we've got the Jenga of bringing those all together at the right moments. I wonder, Nigel, if you want to comment on how we're integrating those as part of our planning process as well, so that we're delivering not just something into a vehicle, but the entire capability that enables what you need at the front line. Nigel.
Yeah, so I'll pick up on enabling projects. That covers air to ground, covers devices, covers control rooms. So they are three of the key work streams that we are working with the user and mobile services teams to bring together through the collective planning that we've been doing over the last few months. Obviously, some of those things are moving forwards reasonably well. We've just got to a stage now where we've got our first initial air device on Tetra that's been certified with Airwave. So we've made some really good progress on that. Obviously, starting to work on devices now, which I touched on earlier, looking to reach out to device suppliers and find out what's on the market, starting the procurement process, looking to link that into the delivery plan. So not only do we have devices when you need them, but actually we need devices a little bit earlier for the pilots, the testing, and possibly even for early MCX testing, which will hopefully start next year. So quite a lot of things moving in that space. On the control room space, we've already started conversations with control room suppliers, working with Frequentis as a control room interface supplier, trying to share information around the design of that interface and working out how long it will take them to build and test their software to work with the interface. All of those things are moving right now.
We know that you can test as much as you like, but when you go live, particularly for those large group calls. So I remember the London riots in 2011, when the Met Police had to bring in thousands of officers from around the country. So how do you guarantee when we're moving from the push-to-talk airwave network to an MCX environment, how are you going to guarantee those very, very large group calls delivering at scale for those kind of situations like the riots?
Yeah. So I think I'll come to you, Matt, first, I think, because a lot of the experience we've had around RAN-FT has been precisely around this. And indeed, last summer, as we recall, the number of riots around the country, and I think part of the point behind your question isn't just how do you do it for large groups, it's how do you do it large groups at scale and at no notice. And that is precisely the kind of work that we've been looking at and analysing the results from those bits. But Matt, I think if I...
Yeah, so
first, please.
we have done a lot of analysis of how would our network perform, how would it perform in particular areas. Yes, the riots were an example that we actually went through, and we've done a lot of work with the user community over the last 10 years to say, on this incident, what would it look like? So what were the number of officers? How were they coming into that particular area? What was the frequency, what the group size, etc. Looking at particular data and things like this to understand how it works, and then mapping that onto our own network as well. the big issues, the things that we get, for example, with the likes of London and the cities and things like this, where there's large groups where actually large incidents happen, actually where a lot of consumers and people are as well. So therefore, the underlying network capacity is there because the push-to-talk service, the throughputs are quite low, as in the talk throughputs and such like to actually go through it. So when we look at the number of sites that we have compared to an airwave, compared to a dedicated network, whether that be emergency services, whether that be power, whether that be utility, it doesn't matter. But the overlapping coverage, the amount of carriers that are deployed, the traffic throughput, as well as then working with, and this is some work that we'll have to do as the integration activity, how do we get the services up and running when you push the button? How do they connect? How quickly do they connect? Do we do permanent connections in certain scenarios? So this bare reliability work, that's exactly what we're working with IBM, the user community, the Home Office, to go through what triggers and capabilities are we going to use to actually support that particular scenario. So we've modelled it, RFT, the RAN field trials, I shouldn't use acronyms, the RAN field trials, the first phase that we've gone through, now the program with the RAN field trial, can't say that quickly, RAN field trials phase 2, when we're looking at, again, a lots of devices in particular areas, in congested areas with lots of users there. They're the work that we'll do to do this optimization from an end-to-end perspective, not just radio, because it's not just radio, it's also the end-to-end solution and how we work with distributing the data centers. So therefore, the triggering points for the PCF to trigger is distributed. So all of this work is the work that we're actually going through, and we're using the RFT to try to deliver that activity.
Thank you, Matt. We've run out of time, so if there are any further questions that you might have, I'll just come to Mark, I think, from a final perspective, from a user point. But we will be present at the ESN stand for some moments after this, if there's any follow-up questions people may have. But Mark, over
Thanks.
to you.
I was just going to say, from the point of view of the operational police officers in the room, we know we need it to work for 1,000 officers in 1 square mile, and we're going to need it to work for 1 officer in 1,000 square miles. I'm not going to go to chiefs and them say to me, Mark, is this going to work? And I go, yeah, should be fine. We're going to need to be able to provide the evidence that means we're confident that we've got mission critical comms that can keep the public safe. And I know that's a shared ambition by the other senior users and by the officers, and that's what we need to provide. So we're not going to be switching off airwave until we know that we can answer that question.
Great, thank you. And thank you, the audience here today. It just remains for me to thank the panel members, so Nigel, Mark, and Matt. Look forward to seeing you all back in 5ES, because we all work there in the same place, and the fantastic view that we have from there. No, maybe, absolutely, maybe not. But nonetheless, thank you all.
Thanks for listening. Remember that by taking time to learn from our speakers, you can earn CPD points from our partner CPDme. So do check out the link in the show notes. Our thanks to MSA Safety for their continued support for our podcast, and Smart Digital for producing this series. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times.